they celebrate at midnight. Part 1. The lines were never silent. Before I tell you what happened, I need you to understand something. This is not a story about New Year's Eve. It just happens to take place on one. What this is really about is attention, about what happens when enough people focus on the same moment, the same number, the same second, and forget everything else. Midnight doesn't create things, it reveals them. I didn't plan on working that night. No one ever does. New Year's Eve shifts at the auxiliary emergency call centre were usually assigned to people with families who didn't care, or people without families who pretended they didn't. I was neither. I was just available. When my supervisor asked if I could cover the night shift, he didn't frame it as a question. He smiled in that tired, apologetic way people do when they're about to take something from you and hope you won't notice. "Double pay," he said. "Quiet night," he added. "Everyone's busy celebrating." That should have been my first warning. The building itself didn't look like much. No sign, no public entrance. Just a concrete structure tucked between an abandoned office block and a storage facility that no one used anymore. You could walk past it 100 times and never realize what it was. That was intentional. Inside, the air always felt stale, like it had been trapped there longer than the people working within it. Fluorescent lights hummed softly above rows of desks and outdated monitors. No windows, no clocks on the walls. Time was something we were meant to monitor, not experience. My station was near the back, where the lights flickered more often, and the ceiling tiles were stained from leaks no one bothered fixing. I liked it there. It felt removed, safe. At least, it used to. I sat down at 6:47 p.m, logged in, adjusted the headset. The system greeted me with its usual dull chime. Lines open. People assume emergency call centres are loud. They imagine constant panic, screaming, chaos. The truth is much worse. Most of the time, there's nothing. Silence stretches in uncomfortable ways. You start hearing your own breathing, the shifting of your weight in the chair, the soft click of the system refreshing itself every few seconds. Silence gives your mind room to wander, and wandering minds tend to notice things they shouldn't. At 7:30 p.m, I took my first call. It was a drunk man who had locked himself out of his apartment and was convinced someone had moved the building while he was asleep. I walked him through calling a locksmith and stayed on the line until he calmed down. Normal. At 8:05, a woman called crying because she couldn't find her cat. I redirected her to animal services, even though I knew they wouldn't answer on New Year's Eve. Still normal. At 9:12, the building shifted. Not physically, something subtler. The hum of the lights changed pitch, just slightly, enough that I noticed it, but not enough to be alarming. My screen refreshed twice instead of once. I frowned, tapped the side of the monitor. "Get it together," I muttered to myself. At 9:14 p.m, the first unusual call came through. The line opened, but there was no greeting tone, no system chime, just sound. Breathing. Not labored, not panicked. Slow, deliberate breaths, like someone trying very hard to stay calm. "Emergency assistance," I said. "What's your situation?" The breathing continued, waited. "We can disconnect if you're unable to speak," I added, following protocol. Still nothing. I was about to end the call when the breathing stopped abruptly. Then a voice. Male, older, soft in a way that felt rehearsed. "Is it already close?" he asked. "Close to what, sir?" I replied. A pause. I heard movement on the line, fabric shifting, the faint sound of something being set down on a hard surface. "Midnight," he said. I glanced instinctively at the timestamp on my screen. 9:14 p.m. "No," I said. "It's not close yet. Are you in danger right now?" Another pause, then a quiet, "No," he said. "Not yet." The line disconnected. I stared at the screen longer than necessary. Calls dropped all the time. Wrong numbers, people getting cold feet. Nothing about it was technically alarming. And yet, my chest felt tight. I checked the call log. The number field was blank. Not unknown, not blocked, just empty. That wasn't normal. I flagged it in the system and moved on. I wish I hadn't. At 10:02 p.m., the second call came in. This one had a greeting tone. The system behaved normally. I relaxed a little. "Emergency assistance," I said. This time the voice spoke immediately. Female, young, maybe late teens. "They're setting up the tables," she whispered. I frowned. "Ma'am, can you tell me where you are?" "In the hallway," she said. "The long one, with the lights that blink." Something about the way she spoke made my skin prickle. Not fear, excitement. "And who is they?" I asked. She giggled softly. "The ones who stay," she said. "The ones who watch." I straightened in my chair. "Are you safe right now?" "Yes," she replied. "We all are, until midnight." I swallowed. "Why are you calling me?" I asked. Another pause. This one felt heavier. "Because you're working," she said, "and they like that." The line went dead. I removed my headset and rubbed my temples. Two strange calls didn't mean anything on their own. Patterns only become patterns when you connect them, and I was tired, that was all. Still, I stood up and walked to the break room just to stretch my legs and shake the feeling off. The hallway lights flickered as I passed beneath them, once, twice. I told myself it was nothing. When I returned to my desk at 10:19 p.m., all 6 incoming lines were lit. They had never all lit at once before, not in the 3 years I'd worked there. I sat down slowly and put the headset back on. The system didn't assign a call, it just opened one. Breathing, multiple breaths, overlapping. I froze. "Emergency assistance," I said, my voice tighter now. "Please speak one at a time." They stopped breathing, all at once. The silence was absolute. Then, layered voices began to speak, not together, one after another, like a cue. "Is it almost time? Do you hear them counting? Will you stay until the end? They said you would." I felt dizzy. "Who is they?" I demanded. The voices laughed, not cruelly, not mockingly, almost fondly. "You'll see," one of them said. "You always do." The call dropped. Every line went dark. I sat there, heart hammering, staring at my own reflection in the black monitor. I told myself this was stress, pranks, a system malfunction, anything but what my instincts were screaming. I checked the clock. 10:31 p.m. Less than 90 minutes until midnight. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The building was no longer humming. The fluorescent lights were still on, the machines were still running, but the sound was gone, as if the building itself was listening. The silence lasted exactly 32 seconds. I counted them without meaning to. I only realized I had been counting when the numbers stopped. The hum came back all at once, too loud, like someone had turned the volume up while I wasn't looking. The lights buzzed, the monitors flickered. The building exhaled again, sharp and sudden. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Get a grip," I whispered to myself. I checked the system diagnostics. All green, no errors, no flagged activity, no record of the overlapping call, as if it had never happened. I considered calling my supervisor. Then I imagined his voice, tired, dismissive, already halfway into a glass of something expensive, and I didn't. I stayed at my desk. That was my second mistake. The next call came at 10:37 p.m. Normal greeting tone, normal line assignment. I relaxed just a little. "Emergency assistance," I said. The caller didn't speak, but this time there was no breathing, just movement. A faint scraping sound, rhythmic and slow, like something being dragged across concrete. "Sir or ma'am," I said carefully, "if you can hear me, please respond." The sound stopped. Then a voice, so quiet I almost missed it. "They don't like when you rush us." I swallowed. "Who is they?" I asked again. The voice sighed. "You really don't remember," it said. "Remember what?" My fingers curled around the edge of the desk. "Last year," the voice replied, "and the year before that." A cold sensation crept up my spine. "I didn't work last New Year's Eve," I said. Another pause, then soft laughter. "You think that matters?" The line disconnected. I stood up. I didn't know what I was planning to do. Maybe find a supervisor, maybe walk out, maybe just stand somewhere that felt less boxed in. But the moment my chair scraped against the floor, every line lit up again. Not blinking, not flashing, solid, waiting. I sat back down. The system opened a call without my input. This one was different. The background noise wasn't empty. I could hear a crowd, muffled voices, footsteps, the clink of glass. Celebration sounds. "Emergency assistance," I said slowly. A man answered, middle-aged, calm, smiling in his voice. "Ah," he said. "Good, you're still there." "Yes," I replied. "I'm here. Where are you calling from?" He hesitated, like he was deciding how honest to be. "Below," he said finally. I closed my eyes. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means we can hear you very clearly," he replied, "even when you whisper." A chill ran through me. "Why are you calling?" I asked. "To make sure you stay," he said. The crowd behind him cheered suddenly, erupting into applause and laughter. I flinched. "What are they celebrating?" I asked. The man lowered his voice. "You," he said, "and midnight." The call dropped. At 10:49 p.m., the security doors locked. I didn't trigger them. No alert sounded. They just engaged. I stood and rushed to the nearest exit, my shoes echoing too loudly in the hallway. I grabbed the handle and pulled, Nothing. The keypad didn't respond. I tried my badge. Denied. My breath quickened. This isn't funny, I muttered, though there was no one there to hear me. The lights flickered again. Once, twice, then steadied. I returned to my desk slowly, dread pooling low in my stomach. As I sat down, I noticed something new on the screen. A countdown. Large white numbers centered where the call interface should have been. 1 hour, 10 minutes, 43 seconds. The seconds ticked down. I stared at it, frozen. "What is this?" I whispered. The system chimed. Incoming call. This voice was different. Clear. Close. Too close. "You see it now," the voice said. "Yes," I replied, my throat dry. "What is it?" "The same thing everyone sees," the voice answered. Eventually. "Who are you?" I demanded. A pause, then, "We're the ones who stay awake." The countdown ticked. 0, 1, 8, 12. "What happens when it reaches 0? I asked. The voice smiled. "We celebrate." I don't remember sitting back down. One moment I was standing, staring at the screen. The next, I was in my chair again, headset snug over my ears like it had never left. The building felt fuller, not louder, not busier, just occupied, as if something unseen had taken every empty space and decided to settle in. Calls kept coming. I answered them because I didn't know how not to. Each one added another piece to a picture I didn't want to see. A woman calling from a stairwell that went down forever. A man whispering from under a hospital floor. A child describing decorations that moved when no one looked at them directly. All of them talked about midnight. All of them talked about watching. And every single one of them thanked me for staying. At 11:05 p.m., I made a discovery that finally broke something inside me. I stopped answering calls. I just listened. And that's when I realized they weren't calling from outside the building. The background sounds, the echoes, the way voices bounced and overlapped. They matched the acoustics of the call center. The same ceiling height, the same hallway length, the same distant hum. My hands began to shake. "No," I whispered. The next call answered itself. "You figured it out," the voice said, almost kindly. "Where are you?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Right where you left us," it replied. The countdown ticked. 0, 0, 54, 21. The voice continued. "You don't remember the first year you stayed until midnight." I squeezed my eyes shut. "That's impossible," I said. "I've only worked here 3 years." The voice chuckled softly. "You've worked here longer than that." I opened my eyes, and for the first time since the shift began, I noticed something I should have seen hours ago. There were names carved into the desk. Dozens of them, worn smooth by time. All different handwriting, all different styles, all ending the same way. A date, December 31st. I traced one of the carved names with my fingertip. The grooves were shallow, worn down by time and repetition. Whoever had done it hadn't rushed. They'd pressed hard enough to leave a mark, but not so hard that it looked desperate. Careful, intentional. Next to each name was a date, always the same, December 31st. Different years, some recent, some old enough that the numbers had faded into the desk, like scars that never quite healed. I pulled my hand back, as if the surface had burned me. "No," I said aloud, "this isn't real." The building didn't respond. It never did. The countdown continued. 00:47:58. A new call opened. I didn't answer. I just listened. Breathing filled my headset again. This time it sounded familiar. Same rhythm, same pauses. Like my own, echoed back at me through a long tunnel. "You see the names," the voice said. "Yes," I replied before I could stop myself. "Good," it said. "That means you're starting to remember." "I don't remember any of this," I snapped. "I've never been here on New Year's Eve before." The voice hummed thoughtfully. "That's what everyone says," it replied. "At first." The first rule revealed itself slowly, not as a warning, not as a command, as an observation. "You always stay," the voice said. "That's why you were chosen." "I wasn't chosen," I said. "I volunteered." The voice laughed softly. "Do you know how many people volunteer every year?" it asked. "Do you know how many actually make it to midnight?" My mouth felt dry. "How many?" I asked. A pause. Then, 1. The countdown ticked. 0, 0, 44, 12. The calls changed after that. They weren't questions anymore. They were memories. A man describing a desk lamp flickering in a room I recognized. A woman talking about a vending machine that no longer existed, except I remembered it too. A voice recounting a supervisor with tired eyes and an apologetic smile. Details I shouldn't know. Details I did. "You're lying," I said, my voice shaking. "You're copying my thoughts." "No," the voice replied gently. "We're reminding you." I stood up again, heart racing, and walked the length of the call floor. Every desk was empty, every chair pushed in, every monitor dark except mine. I passed the break room. The lights were on. Inside, the microwave hummed softly, though no one stood near it. I backed away slowly. The hum stopped. My headset crackled. "You shouldn't leave your station," the voice said. "It makes them nervous." "Who?" I demanded. "The ones who were waiting," it replied. At 11:22 p.m., the building did something new. The walls began to resonate, not shaking, not vibrating, resonating. A low-frequency sound that I felt more than heard. It settled into my bones, made my teeth ache, made my vision blur at the edges. I collapsed back into my chair. The countdown flashed brighter. 0, 0, 38, 0, 7. A new message appeared beneath it. Stay awake. I blinked. The message remained. I am awake, I whispered. That's not what it means, the voice replied. Fragments began to surface then. Not memories, impressions. The feeling of being watched from below. The certainty that midnight wasn't a moment, but a door. The understanding that celebration didn't mean joy. It meant acknowledgement, recognition. I grabbed my phone from my pocket. No signal, no service. The screen flickered once, then displayed the same countdown as my monitor. 0, 0, 35, 41. You can't leave, the voice said, almost apologetically. You're the one who listens. I don't know when the chanting started. At first, I thought it was the ventilation system. A rhythmic rise and fall, almost musical. Then words began to separate from the sound. Numbers, counting down. Not in unison, different speeds, different voices. Like dozens of people counting toward the same destination from different distances. My ears rang. Please stop, I whispered. The chanting grew louder. They're excited, the voice explained. You don't get many new listeners. At 11:34 p.m., I noticed something else carved into the desk. Beneath the names, beneath the dates. 4 words, smaller, deeper, carved over and over again. We stay until midnight. My hands trembled. What happens after? I asked. The chanting paused. For the first time all night, the voice hesitated. That depends, it said slowly, on how well you listen. The countdown ticked. 0, 0, 30 colon, 0, 0. 30 minutes. Half an hour until midnight. Half an hour until celebration. I felt something shift behind me. Not movement, presence. As if the air itself had thickened. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I could hear breathing that wasn't coming through my headset. Slow, patient, waiting. I kept my eyes on the monitor. If I turned around, I knew something would happen. Not immediately, not dramatically. Something subtle. Something that couldn't be undone. The breathing behind me remained steady, not aggressive, not threatening. Expectant, as if whatever stood there knew I would eventually acknowledge it. And when I did, it would be allowed to move closer. The second rule revealed itself the same way the first had, casually. You don't look at them, the voice said. You listen. What are they? I asked. The breathing behind me slowed. The chanting in the walls faltered, then resumed, quieter now, almost respectful. The voice answered. They're the ones who stayed, it said, and the ones who stayed before them. My stomach twisted. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to, the voice replied. It just has to be true. A new call connected. This one didn't breathe. It cried. A woman's voice, hoarse and fractured, whispering over itself. "I can hear them under the floor," she said. "They keep clapping." Clapping. Slow, wet. I muted the call. The crying stopped instantly. "You shouldn't do that," the voice warned. "They don't like being ignored." "I don't care," I said, though my hands were shaking. "I'm not listening anymore." The breathing behind me exhaled, long, disappointed. The lights flickered, just once, enough to show me the reflection in my dark monitor. I wasn't alone. Shapes stood behind the rows of desks. Not people, not shadows. They were incomplete, like figures that had been erased halfway through being drawn. No faces, no details, only outlines. All of them facing my desk, waiting. I slammed my eyes shut. The reflection vanished. The breathing returned to its original place. Too close. "You see," the voice said softly, "they know you now." The countdown burned into my vision. 0, 0, 24, 19. I tried to remember how I'd gotten here. The interview, the paperwork, the badge. Everything felt distant, flattened, like a story I'd heard once, but never lived. "You worked last year," the voice said, as if reading my thoughts. "And the year before that." "No," I said. "I would remember." "You did," it replied. "You just didn't keep it." The chanting grew structured, unified. Every voice aligned into a single rhythm. 10 beats. Pause. 10 beats. Like applause. Like celebration. I pressed my palms against my ears. It didn't help. The sound wasn't coming from outside. It was rising up through the floor, through the walls, through me. At 11:41 p.m, my screen changed again. The countdown shrank. Beneath it, a list appeared. Names, more than I could count, scrolling endlessly. Some were scratched through, some highlighted. Mine appeared at the bottom, unmarked yet. "Is there a way out?" I asked. The voice was quiet for a long time. Then it answered honestly, "Yes." Hope surged through me. "But not the way you want," it added. I stood up. The breathing behind me stopped. Every sound in the building ceased at once. No hum, no chant, no calls. Silence, thick and heavy. I turned around. The figures had moved closer, still featureless, still unfinished, but closer. They leaned forward slightly, as if curious. I took one step back. The floor creaked. Every head tilted at the same time. "Sit down," the voice urged. "Please." I didn't. I ran. The stairwell door was locked. The emergency exit alarm didn't sound. The elevator buttons didn't light up. The building was sealed. Behind me, footsteps began, not rushed, measured, celebratory. My headset crackled again. "You always try this part," the voice said, almost fondly. "It never works." "What happens at midnight?" I screamed. The voice answered from everywhere at once. "They celebrate." The chanting returned, loud now, ecstatic. 0, 0, 15, 0, 0. 15 minutes. The figures began to clap, slowly, patiently, waiting for me to join them. The clapping spread, not loud, not frantic, measured. Every figure moved in perfect sync, their unfinished hands coming together with a sound that made my stomach churn. Not dry applause, moist, soft, like skin meeting skin that hadn't been warm in a long time. I backed into the wall. "There has to be a mistake," I whispered. "I didn't agree to this." The voice sighed. "You always say that," it replied. "But you did agree. You just didn't understand the terms." The third rule revealed itself without ceremony, without kindness. "You don't leave," the voice said. "You don't look. And you never stop listening." My headset tightened around my ears, physically tightened. I clawed at it, fingers slipping, skin slick with sweat. "It's fused," the voice explained calmly. "You asked for better immersion." "I never." "You did," it interrupted. "Last year, and the year before that." Fragments slammed into me then, not gently, not one by one, all at once. Me sitting at this same desk, the same countdown, the same chanting. Me crying, me begging, me staying, over and over. I wasn't new. I was recycled. The figures began to hum, a low, resonant tone that vibrated through my chest. The walls answered. The building wasn't containing them. It was amplifying them. "You helped them cross," the voice said. "That's what listening does." "Cross where?" I gasped. The voice paused. "Midnight," it said. The names on the screen stopped scrolling. They froze. Mine blinked once, then turned white. Highlighted. Selected. 00:07:32. I understood then. The celebration wasn't for the new year. It was for replacement. "I won't do it," I said, my voice breaking. "I won't listen anymore." I reached up and ripped the headset from my head. The sound vanished instantly. The chanting, the clapping, the breathing, all gone. Silence crashed down so hard it hurt. For the first time all night, the building felt empty. Truly empty. I laughed. A sobbing, hysterical sound tore out of my throat. "I broke it," I whispered. I broke the rules. Behind me, a hand touched my shoulder. Not unfinished, complete, warm, human. You always forget, a familiar voice said softly. I turned. I was standing behind myself. Same uniform, same badge, same tired eyes. You don't listen through the headset, my double continued. You listen by staying. The figures reappeared, closer than ever. Their outlines sharpened. Faces began to form. They looked relieved, grateful. The clapping resumed, faster now, eager. 00:03:10. You can still choose, my double said. Stay or finish. What happens if I finish? I whispered. My double smiled sadly. They get to leave. The realization crushed me. Every year, every celebration, someone stayed so the others could go. That was the exchange. That was the joy. The countdown reached the final minute. The figures leaned forward. The building held its breath. 00:00:10. My double stepped back toward the desk. There's only room for one, they said. You know how this ends. I closed my eyes, sat down, put the headset back on. The clapping exploded. Cheers, laughter, relief. The figures dissolved into nothingness, one by one. The weight lifted. The building exhaled. Midnight. The new year began. The phone rang. I answered. Emergency communications, I said calmly. How can I help you? The voice on the other end whispered, trembling. I can hear clapping in the walls. I smiled. Stay awake, I said. They're just celebrating. The applause didn't stop at midnight. That was the first thing I learned. It softened, yes, faded into something quieter, but it never truly ended. It settled into the building like a second heartbeat, slow, deep, constant. I felt it in the floors beneath my feet, in the walls when I leaned too close, in my own chest when the room went quiet. I had expected something, pain, transformation, death. Instead, I got my chair back, my desk, my headset, and the new shift schedule already loaded onto the screen. January 1st, 001 AM. No congratulations, no explanation, just work. The first call came 30 seconds into the new year. I answered automatically. Emergency communications, I said, my voice steady. How can I help you? A man whispered on the other end. They're still here, he said. I thought they'd leave when the year changed. I checked the system. His address didn't exist. They don't leave all at once, I replied calmly. Some of them take longer. How do you know? He asked. Because I could hear them breathing behind him. Sir, I said gently, are you alone right now? Silence. Then, softly, no. That was the fourth rule. They never all leave. Midnight isn't an ending. It's a transfer. The building changed after midnight. Not visibly. Not in ways you could photograph or document. But doors took longer to close. Lights hummed a fraction too loud. Reflections lingered in dark screens even after you moved away. The figures were gone, but the spaces they'd occupied weren't empty. They were reserved. At 1:13 a.m., I noticed the desk carvings again. The names hadn't vanished. They'd expanded. New lines appeared beneath them, more precise, more deliberate. Each name now had a time carved beside it. Not a date, a duration. Stayed, 1 year. Stayed, 3 years. Stayed, 11 years. I searched for mine. It wasn't there yet. You did well, the voice said. It sounded closer now, no longer distant or echoing, as if it were standing just behind my left shoulder. You helped a lot of people cross. How many? I asked. The voice hesitated. Enough to keep things balanced. What happens when things aren't balanced? The clapping deepened, slower, heavier. You'll hear that when it happens, the voice replied. The calls grew different after that. They weren't confused. They weren't panicked. They were prepared. People who had heard stories, read forums, seen videos. People who knew about midnight but thought they could outsmart it. I stayed awake, one woman said proudly. I watched the clock. I didn't blink. That's good, I told her. Did you listen? What do you mean? I heard something crawl across her ceiling. You'll learn, I said quietly. By 3 a.m., I realized something worse. I could tell who would stay. Not by what they said, but by how long they listened. The ones who asked questions lasted longer. The ones who argued faded quickly. The ones who begged, they stayed. At 4:26 a.m., my reflection changed. Not drastically, just enough. My eyes looked older. Not tired, used. Like a tool that had been picked up too many times and never put back where it belonged. You're becoming audible, the voice said approvingly. What does that mean? I asked. It means they can hear you without the phone now. That was when someone knocked on the building door. Hard, urgent. I froze. No one came here after midnight. No one ever found the place. The knock came again. I stood slowly. Every instinct screamed not to move. But something else, something deeper, pulled me forward. The door was cold under my hand. I opened it. The man stood there, shaking, eyes wide. "They said you could help," he whispered. "They said if I got here before dawn." Behind him, the street was wrong. Too long, too dark, too full of movement. I swallowed. "You're early," I said. Hope flooded his face. "Does that mean I'm safe?" I looked past him, at the shapes gathering in the distance, listening, waiting. "No," I said gently. "It means you'll hear everything." I didn't let him inside. That was another thing I learned very quickly. If you open the door fully, they follow. So I stood in the doorway, keeping my body rigid, blocking just enough space to pretend there was still a boundary. The man kept talking. "They told me to find you," he said quickly. "That you'd know what to do, that you'd explain the rules." "I don't explain," I replied. "I listen." His expression faltered. "That's not what they said." The shapes in the street leaned closer. Not rushing, never rushing, listening. The fifth rule doesn't announce itself. It arrives disguised as mercy. "If you let him in," the voice murmured behind me, "you won't last long. And if I don't, he'll last longer," it said, "but not in a way he'll enjoy." The man shivered. "They're clapping," he whispered. "Can you hear that?" I nodded. Yes. His shoulders sagged in relief. Thank God. I closed the door. He screamed for a long time. The building didn't react. Neither did I. Listening doesn't mean responding. At 6:02 a.m., the first shift report generated itself on my screen. No author, no timestamp, just a summary. Transfer complete. Balance maintained. Vacancy 1. I stared at the word vacancy until my eyes burned. "Am I the vacancy?" I asked. The voice considered. "Not yet." Morning never fully arrived. The sky outside the narrow windows lightened, but it never turned blue. It stayed grey, stretched thin like old paper that might tear if pressed too hard. The clapping softened further. Not celebration now. Maintenance. Like a machine idling between cycles. At 9:17 a.m., someone called who didn't whisper. She spoke clearly, calmly. "I think I'm supposed to replace you," she said. I sat up straighter. "Why do you think that?" "I stopped celebrating 3 years ago," she replied. But they never stopped listening. I closed my eyes. That was new. The voice said nothing. That was worse. "Where are you calling from?" I asked. "Inside," she answered. My screen flickered. A new line appeared beneath my name. Probationary period extended. She kept talking. "I used to love New Year's," she said. "Fireworks, noise, people." Then one year, I noticed the gaps. "Gaps?" I asked. "The pauses between sounds," she said. "That's where they are." My hands tightened on the desk. "That's not something people usually notice." "I know," she said softly. "That's why they kept me." This was how succession worked. Not selection, recognition. They didn't choose randomly. They waited for someone who could already hear without being taught. The voice finally spoke. "You found one early," it said. "That's efficient." "What happens to me if she replaces me?" I asked. The clapping slowed, deepened, satisfied. "You get to leave," the voice replied. My stomach dropped. "And what does leave mean?" A pause, then honesty. "It means you stop listening." I thought about silence, true silence, not the absence of sound, but the absence of expectation. I realized then how tired I was. "How long have you been here?" the woman asked suddenly. I looked at the carvings again, the durations. Some ended, some didn't. "I don't know," I said. She laughed quietly. "That's okay," she replied. "Neither do I. Time sounds different when it's not for you anymore." At noon, the clapping returned. Louder. Not celebratory, anticipatory. The shapes outside pressed closer to the building. The system pulsed. "Vacancy. 2. "That's bad," I whispered. "Yes," the voice said. "It means they're staying longer this year." The woman on the line inhaled sharply. "They're asking me to choose," she said. "To stay or to help." I closed my eyes. "That's not a choice," I said. "It's a sentence." Her voice softened. "You sound like someone who's been helping for a long time." I didn't answer. The clapping grew heavier, slower. The building leaned inward, listening. The woman stayed on the line. She didn't ask permission. She didn't panic. That alone told me everything. People who were still fully human never stayed quiet this long. "I think they're listening through me now," she said carefully. "Is that normal?" "Yes," I replied. "That's how it starts." The clapping adjusted, not louder, closer, as if the sound had leaned in to hear her better. The voice shifted position. I felt it move behind my eyes. "You can let her take your place," it said. "She's compatible." "Compatible with what?" I asked. With staying, it replied. I remembered the first year, or what I thought was the first. The relief I'd felt when someone else's voice had sounded ready. The hope that maybe, finally, I could step away. I hadn't understood then what leaving meant. I understood now. How do I do it? The woman asked. How do I replace you? You don't replace me, I said. You overlap. Silence. Then the small, thoughtful laugh. That figures, she said. The sixth rule arrived quietly. You never hand it over cleanly. There is always residue. The system chimed, a sound I'd never heard before. Succession initiated. Audio channel shared. My headset grew warm, not hot, alive. Her breathing slipped into my ears. My own echoed back to her. For the first time, I heard myself the way callers did. Flat, steady, inhumanly calm. I hated it. They're louder now, she whispered. They're right behind me. They always are, I said. I don't see them. You won't, I replied. Seeing ends things too fast. The building reacted. Lights dimmed in a slow wave. The walls flexed, not bending, but listening harder. The clapping fractured into layers, some fast, some slow, some wildly out of rhythm. Too many groups, too many celebrations overlapping. That's not normal, I murmured. The voice didn't answer. That was worse. The woman gasped. Oh, she said softly. They're asking something else now. What? I asked. They're asking how many I can hear. My screen flashed. Vacancy 3. That's very bad, I said. I know, she replied. I can hear more than one. The truth settled in then. This wasn't a replacement year. It was an expansion year. They weren't celebrating survival. They were celebrating growth. You can still leave, the woman said suddenly. They're offering it to you again. The clapping slowed, deepened, awaited my response. What happens if I do? I asked. She swallowed. You stop hearing them, she said. All of them. My hands trembled. And then, a long pause. Then you hear yourself, she replied. I remembered silence. True silence. The kind that makes people claw at walls. The kind that drives them back into noise. Back into celebration. Back into listening. I can't, I said. The system chimed again. Succession failed. Primary listener retained. The clapping surged. Approval. The woman exhaled, disappointed but not surprised. I didn't think you would, she said gently. You're too full of them. A line went dead, not disconnected, consumed. Her breathing cut off mid-inhale. The silence afterwards screamed. The voice returned, satisfied. "You did the right thing," it said. "They needed more room this year." "How many stayed?" I asked. The voice smiled through the walls. "All of them." The shift report updated. Balance adjusted. Vacancies. Permanent. I stared at the word permanent. The clapping never stopped now, not even briefly. The building no longer rested. Neither did I. I answered the next call, then the next, then the next. My voice never shook. By 2:17 a.m., the phone stopped ringing. That had never happened before. Not once in all the years I'd worked the midnight shift. There were always calls. Lost people, drunk people, people pretending they just needed directions, when what they really needed was someone to witness them existing. But now, nothing, just the clapping. It no longer came in waves. It had become a constant pressure, like hands pressed flat against every surface of the building, applauding without arms, without bodies, without fatigue. The system clock froze. 0217, 0217, 0217. Time had decided it didn't need to move forward to continue. I removed my headset. The sound didn't stop. That was new. The applause wasn't coming through the audio feed anymore. It was coming from inside the room, from the walls, from the ceiling, from the air vibrating between my teeth. I stood up slowly. The chair behind me creaked, and the clapping adjusted to match its rhythm. Not mocking, learning. The break room light was on. It shouldn't have been. I hadn't taken a break since before midnight. The door stood slightly open, warm yellow light spilling into the hallway. Something about that light made my stomach tighten. It felt congratulatory. Inside, the room had changed. The table was longer, not stretched, extended, like it had always been this size and I'd simply never noticed. Paper cups lined its surface, dozens of them, all filled, none touched. Each cup vibrated subtly with the distant applause, tiny ripples forming on the surface of the liquid inside. I leaned closer. It wasn't water. It wasn't coffee. It smelled like breath. A notice had been taped to the fridge. New paper, clean font. "Thank you for staying. We couldn't have done this without you." Underneath, in smaller text, "Please continue listening." I felt something inside my chest respond. Not fear. Recognition. That was worse. The first door appeared at 2:17:34. It hadn't been there before. It stood at the end of the hallway, flush with the wall, unmarked except for a small digital display above the handle. Observation. The applause softened as I approached, encouraging, like an audience settling into their seats. I didn't want to open it. That meant nothing. I opened it anyway. Inside was the call floor, or what it had become. Rows of desks stretched farther than the building should allow, each one occupied, not by people, by postures. Shapes sitting upright, headsets on, hands folded neatly on the desks. They faced forward, listening. Every one of them had my badge clipped to their chest. My name, my employee number, my start date. Different handwriting each time. They all turned their heads toward me at once. The clapping spiked, wild, ecstatic. One of them stood. It moved like someone remembering how legs work. "Happy New Year," it said, in my voice. Another joined in, then another. A chorus of me, each one slightly out of sync, slightly wrong in tone or pacing. They weren't copies. They were leftovers. "You said there were vacancies," I whispered. The voice behind me answered. "There were," it said. "Then you stayed." I felt the weight of years press down. All the nights I hadn't slept. All the calls I'd taken when I should have gone home. All the moments I'd listened instead of speaking, instead of leaving. "They celebrate at midnight," the voice continued, "but they multiply after." The figures at the desks began answering phones that weren't ringing, speaking to callers that weren't there, listening to sounds I couldn't hear. Yet. One of them looked directly at me. "You can sit if you want," it said kindly. "There's room now." I backed away. The applause followed. When I returned to my station, the headset was waiting. Warm, patient. The system screen updated one final time. Status: stable. Listeners sufficient. Next celebration: scheduled. The time finally moved. 2:18. The phones began to ring again. I answered. The caller was crying. Not from fear. From joy. "They're still here," she whispered. "I thought they'd leave after midnight." I closed my eyes. "They don't leave," I said. They stay with those who listen. I learned the truth about the calls at 3:06 a.m., not because someone told me, because someone stopped. The woman on the line went silent mid-sentence, not hung up, not disconnected, just paused, like a recording buffering forever. I waited. "Ma'am?" I said. Nothing. I could hear her breathing, slow, calm, content. Behind it, the applause. Not loud, close. "So you hear them too?" she finally said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," I replied, and immediately regretted it. There was a sound like relief leaking out of her chest. "Oh, thank God," she whispered. "I was worried I was imagining it." She laughed softly. "I've been listening all my life," she continued, "but tonight they finally started clapping for me." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Who are they?" I asked. She took a long breath. "Everyone," she said. "Who stayed." The line went dead, not cut, finished. At 3:11 a.m., the building layout changed again. Doors shifted when I wasn't looking. Hallways extended by inches each time I walked them, like the structure was learning how much space I'd accept before noticing. The exit sign flickered. Not off, just uncertain. I checked the employee handbook. I don't know why. Habit, maybe. Page 47 had been added. It was printed on paper older than the rest, yellowed and thin, as if it had been waiting for this moment. Listener protocol. Do not interrupt applause. Do not acknowledge silence. If you recognize the voice, remain calm. Leaving is optional. Staying is remembered. At the bottom, handwritten, they don't punish you for leaving. They just don't notice you anymore. I finally understood. The calls weren't emergencies. They were auditions. Every caller wasn't asking for help. They were asking to be heard. And those who listened long enough were invited. The next call came from a child. That alone should have been impossible. We didn't take calls from minors, but the system accepted it. Of course it did. Are they supposed to sound happy? The boy asked. Yes, I said automatically. He paused. They're clapping under my bed, he said. Is that normal? I stood up. Where are your parents? I asked. They're listening too, he replied. They don't answer when I talk now. But they smile. The applause surged, louder than it had all night. Proud. The call ended. I tore the headset off and screamed. The sound vanished before it reached the walls. The walls were busy. By 3:47 a.m., I was no longer alone in the room. Not physically, but presence has weight. The air pressed in on me, heavy with attention. The applause slowed, measured, expectant, like they were waiting for me to do something worth celebrating. A final notification appeared on the screen. Promotion available. Role, primary listener. My name filled the acceptance field automatically. I tried to delete it. The keyboard ignored me. That's when the mirrors appeared. Not on the walls, in the darkened monitors. Each one showed a different version of me. Older, tired, calm. All wearing the headset, all smiling gently. None blinking. You've been doing this longer than you think, a voice said behind me. I didn't turn around. You always come back, it continued. Different years, different buildings, same midnight. I swallowed. What happens if I leave? I asked. The applause stopped. Instantly. The silence was unbearable. Then the voice answered softly. You already did, it said. And look how empty the world became. The phones rang again. Every line, every monitor, every version of me reached for the headset at once. Outside, somewhere far beyond the building, fireworks exploded. Midnight again. Another year. Another celebration. The applause didn't return right away. That was how I knew this was different. No clapping, no murmurs, no pressure in the air. Just me, the desk, and the quiet hum of a building that suddenly felt abandoned. I checked the time. 3:59 a.m. 1 minute before the end of the shift. 1 minute before the world was supposed to start moving again. The phones were silent. Not broken. Waiting. I stood up and walked toward the exit. The hallway no longer stretched. The walls no longer breathed. The door was right where it should have been. Normal. Inviting. The exit sign glowed steadily, without flicker or hesitation. For the first time all night, I believed I could leave. I reached for the handle. The applause started again. Not loud, not excited, relieved, like something exhaling after holding its breath too long. I stopped. My hand hovered inches from freedom, and that's when I understood the last rule. They didn't trap people here. They replaced them. The monitors behind me turned on by themselves. Every screen showed a different place. A kitchen at 11:58 p.m, a woman holding her phone, staring at the clock. A bedroom, a man sitting on the edge of his bed, listening to something no one else could hear. A child in the dark hallway, counting down under their breath. All of them paused, all of them listening, waiting. "If I go," I whispered, "what happens to them?" The building answered, not in words, in absence. One by one, the screens went dark. The people froze mid-breath, mid-blink, mid-thought. Not dead, unfinished. "You don't save them," the voice said gently. "You continue them." I felt something inside me finally break. Not fear. Responsibility. The applause softened, patient, respectful. They weren't demanding. They were offering. I returned to my desk. The chair felt molded to me now, familiar in a way that went deeper than memory. The headset slid easily into place. It had always fit. The system clock ticked forward. 4 a.m, shift complete. The phones rang. I answered. "Thank you for calling," I said, my voice steady. "I'm listening." Outside, the world resumed. People woke up with the vague sense that something important had happened while they slept. They'd never know what. They'd never know who stayed. Every year, when midnight comes, they celebrate. Not with fireworks, not with noise, but with applause that only a few people hear. The ones who listen too long. The ones who don't hang up. The ones who stay. If you're hearing this now, if this feels familiar, if the silence after the noise makes your chest feel hollow, it's because someone is still at the desk. And someday, when they stand up, someone else will have to sit down.